Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tonight we're going to be talking about Persuasion by Jane Austen, as well as two retellings, The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dawn, and For Darkness Shows the Stars by Deanne Peterfreund, I think it is. I don't remember. I just returned the books to the library and I was in the middle of filming and I used my phone to film, and so I don't want to take down all of my stuff and look it up. So, For Darkness Shows the Stars by, I will put it up on the screen. Anyways, I have said this name so many times, I should be able to remember it, but whatever, whatever. Yeah, I actually filmed this video like a week ago, and there was just issues with my hair hitting the microphone over and over and over again, and I finally gave up trying to figure out how to get that noise out of the video, and I thought I'll just refilm it. So I had all these notes planned out and thoughts, and honestly I can't find that notebook either, so we're just winging it. I mean, I wing it pretty much anyways, but I usually kind of have a little bit of an outline to guide myself to help me stay on target and not go off on tangents too often, because I'm prone to do that. Whatever, we're just going for it. Okay, so both of these books, The Stars We Steal and For Darkness Shows the Stars, they're both in the YA genre, and both of them have created their own worlds. One is sci-fi, it's Persuasion in space, and the other one is kind of a future dystopian type of society, sort of like post-apocalyptic kind of, where there's not the same technology we have. And anyways, she's used that to kind of create a society where the events that happen in Persuasion would kind of make some sense. Anyways, both of them have worlds that I found very intriguing, and I thought it was brilliant the way they set it up to have Persuasion work within those worlds. And I was really excited to read both books. And both books had some decent twists within them. They both did a really good job of not staying too close to the original. You know, they deviated enough that I felt like I was reading something new while still getting that, I don't know, that little bit of that satisfaction from Persuasion. I did not like both books to the same extent, though, sadly. It's a little bit awkward because, well, one of the books is by a YouTuber, author-tuber that I really love and follow. I enjoyed her debut novel, Brightly Burning, and I plan on reading her newest novel that I think is coming out very soon, The Ivies. But this one just, I don't know if it was maybe because, well, we'll talk about it in a second. Let me talk about For Darkness Shows the Stars. I don't know why. So, For Darkness Shows the Stars, the main character, the heroine, is Elliot North, and she is the Anne Elliot character. What happens, I think in the book she's like 18, and 4 years before that, when she was 14, she had a romance with one of the people who are called posts. So let me just kind of tell you the setup of the world. In this world, this is set in the future where everything that has been genetically modified has turned out to be kind of a disaster. But before they realized that all of these things were disastrous, they started genetically modifying human beings. I think it's called ERV. And so anyone who got ERV, they kind of became superhuman. They had super strength, super speed, super sight, super intelligence. But something they didn't know would happen, one of the side effects is that their offspring were, rather than being heightened or elevated humans, were reduced humans. So they had slower speech, slower intelligence, slower reactions. Like they just are people that cannot function on their own. They have to be taken care of. And they are able to do things, they can work, but they have to be directed and told what to do. So the entire world, it goes through what's called the reduction, because almost everybody received ERV. An entire generation basically becomes reduced. And so it's sort of this event that threatens the whole destruction, disintegration of the entire world, because there's this entire generation of people that cannot take care of themselves, and they are going to die because they're basically like children, and maybe even less capable than children. And the only people that aren't reduced there are a few countries that were too poor to participate in ERV, and there are these religious groups known as the Luddites. And according to the Luddite history, the people who received ERV are so bitter and resentful at everyone who didn't, and who is having, offspring, and their countries are okay, and their countries are going to survive, that these nations that are filled with the reduced, they just go on the war path and they destroy these other nations. Kind of like, if we can't survive, you can't survive. And so basically the entire world is destroyed in this war with those who are enhanced or whatever. And most of the reduced are even killed. There are some that survive. And then there is the group of people, the Luddites, which I mentioned, who, according to their history, they hid out in the caves. They were of the philosophy not to ever eat genetically modified food. And so it was like this, it was a religion for them. Like they were taught that not to partake of anything that God didn't intend it to be that way. So they did not receive the ERV. And when all the bombings and the wars happened, they went into the caves and they hid to survive. And when everything was quiet and, post-apocalypse, they came out of the caves and they took in the reduced and they cared for them. They became the caretakers. So these Luddites become the wealthy landowners. Eventually, generation upon generation, they start to rebuild society. And they are the ones that are in power. They are the ones that have wealth. And the reduced are basically their slave force. And depending on which property you're on, some Luddites treat the reduced better than others. Some are very kind and, allow for good things for them, better living conditions, and others are very cruel. But for the most part, they're basically slaves. They just do whatever they're told to do, and they don't have a whole lot of freedoms. Then what happens in this world is these reduced, they produce children. Each generation is producing children. And so I'm not even sure how long it's been since the wars. It's been long enough that it's almost sort of like there's no one around who can say that they know for sure this is what the history teaches them, kind of a thing. So it's almost like it's legend in a sense. But anyways, some of the reduced begin having children that are normal again, just regular humans who have normal intelligence and everything else. They are completely capable, just as capable as the Luddites. And so these children they call themselves the post-reductionists, right? After the reduced. So they start being called posts. Anyways, posts, though, are born to the reduced. And so they are born into slavery. And with a lot of the Luddites, they don't want the posts running away. They kind of treat the posts just like slaves as well. They're a lot more valuable than the reduced because they are a lot more capable. So they become like their managers and their foremen and whatnot, but they are still treated with the same kind of horrible conditions that the others are treated with. Anyways, so the bulk of the story is the romance is between North Elliot, who is a Luddite, and Kai, who is a post. Kai, at the age of 14, he wants to run away and he wants Elliot to go with him. And of course, just like in Persuasion, she refuses. And well, she agrees, and then she changes her mind and realizes she can't do that. And you find out more and more why she changed her mind as the book goes on. I'm going to try to do non-spoilers here, but and it makes sense to you why she ends up changing her mind, and you completely understand and even agree with her. But for Kai, he doesn't have the same insight that the reader does, and he has a different view as to why she changed her mind, which has made him kind of bitter. All right, so let me talk about whether I liked this book or not. I thought that the world that she had created was fascinating, and I feel like there are so many different places you can go with this world, and ways that you can explore. And I loved the character of Elliot. I thought she was very well done. She was very similar to Anne. Well, being a little bit different, but she had echoes of Anne Elliot within her, and so I was rooting for her. And the romance between her and Kai, for the most part, I liked it. It wasn't too back and forth. Like, I feel like with a lot of YA romances, you just get this ridiculous backbiting and arguments and things that just go nowhere, and intentional misunderstandings. And with them, it didn't feel like that too much. There were times where it felt like it was getting a little too much, but for the most part, I liked the conflict that they went through when they're seeing each other again. There was a point where I felt like Kai got a little too close to being physically abusive. I don't know if he crossed the line or not. He grabs her by the wrists, and she says, from her perspective, like later on, it's Elliot North's perspective, and she says, like, he didn't hurt me, but he had grabbed me very firmly. But in that part of the scene, he's holding her so firmly, like she can't get away, and he's also very angry with her in that moment. And so that was like maybe getting a little too close to the line for me, where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like you, Kai. Like, you need to back off. Anyways, he's a little bit mean, and it comes a little too close to the line of being just a jerk, where I just don't like him anymore. But at the same time, if his perspective is true, what he thinks happened and why it happens, you can kind of understand the resentment and the bitterness a little bit. So again, like, it's okay. It works out for the most part. Where the book loses me, it does start to drag a little bit towards the end, and it builds up to what you think is going to be this really big, major conflict, exciting climax, and it just kind of fizzles. And I don't know. So there's elements where there are twists that are pretty well done. I saw the twist coming, but it was still created for a very interesting, intriguing part of the book. And then it felt like that didn't go anywhere. It's like there was this twist, and then it doesn't really feel like it resolves into anything. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Yeah. So the ending, I don't know. It was okay. It just feels like it could have been more. It feels like there's so much more that could have been done with this world. And some things, it just like ended, the way it ended just felt very convenient and a little too easy. Yeah. So overall, I enjoyed it. It was a nice, quick, easy read. I really felt the emotions from Elliot, and I enjoyed reading it from her perspective. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like there could have been something more of an arc there, or I don't know, just needed a little bit more oomph towards the end of it. But it was an intriguing enough read and world that I am very much interested in reading more from this author. She did another retelling set in the same world of The Scarlet Pimpernel, except the Scarlet Pimpernel in this story will be a girl. So I think I'm definitely going to read that one and see what happens. But yeah, overall, fairly well done, especially for a YA doing a romance, because I feel like those ones are the hardest for me to read. All right, moving on to The Stars We Still by Alexa Dawn. Again, this one is set in space. I love the setup that she's created. She's created this whole courting ritual, this where every 4 years, the wealthy and the elite get together, and for like a month or 2 months, I think it's just 1 month, they go on all these elaborate dates with each other and, like speed dating and surveys and matching up to see who's the most compatible. And it's just this one big giant frenzy of trying to find a match and getting engaged, because they're in space. They all need to make sure they're not marrying their cousins, and they want to keep the wealth within the family because they've been in space for a long time and a lot of their wealth is running out. So anyways, that whole setup I loved. I thought it was genius the way that she set that up, because one of the key points in retelling a Jane Austen novel, because you're always going to have that conflict between the love interests, you need to find a way that allows them to have that time where that they spend together, where they're eventually able to fall in love or fall back in love or whatever, reach that climax of love, declaring their love for each other. And a lot of retellings I have found as I've been reading, because they're focusing so much on keeping this conflict going, you don't get a lot of time between the two characters. So the setup I thought was like, oh, this will be great. It'll give them lots of time to be in the same rooms with each other, maybe even be on like dates where, it's blind dates or something, where they're forced to be together and they have to spend time together and it's awkward or whatever it might be. And I was excited to read that, but it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted. You basically just choose whichever events you want to go to, and the main character, who is Leo, she just like doesn't ever want to go to any of the events. So I don't know why. It would be so much fun, but I guess not, because you're not supposed to think it's fun. I don't know. Anyways, great setup. So the problem is, and this is something that the first book struggles with a little bit too, in the original Persuasion, Anne and Captain Wentworth, they haven't seen each other. I think it's been 7 years. She was 19 at the time. I think she's 27 when he comes back, or she's in her 27th year. It's been 7 or 8 years since they've seen each other. And in the YA books, it's been 4 years. In the other one, it's 3 years. The Stars We Steal. And it just feels like, especially because they're so young when they knew each other. I don't know. I'm thinking back to when I was 15 or 14, and the boy that I was in love with at that time, like not a lot. I don't know. There's something about when you're a teenager, like you just kind of, you fall in love so quickly, and I'm finding a hard way to explain my thoughts on this. It feels like you think you're going to love this person forever. Like you will never get over this person. And it's just like the world is over if they don't love you back, kind of a thing, when you're a teenager. And so it's hard to take this love that they have when they're 14 and 15 years old. Or I guess Leo is 16, because she's 19 in the book, which is kind of pushing it for a YA, but Alexa got away with it, so good on her. So I think they're 15 when they meet, they're 16 when they get engaged and then break up. So, but it's so, okay, yeah. So they knew each other for like about a year, and I don't know. It's just, for me, when I'm comparing myself to when I was 15 and 16, it's hard for me to imagine that taking that love super seriously, I guess, as a reader, which is maybe unfair, but that's just a hurdle that YA has to cross in general. And then on top of that, they've only been away from each other for 3 years. So in the original Persuasion, it talks about how it says, both of them mention at one point in that book how they have never known each other's equal. Anne has received a marriage proposal since she's seen Captain Wentworth. She has been to balls, she's been in society, right? She's meeting other men and everything, and even to the point where somebody proposes to her, a very good match, and she has to refuse him because she just doesn't love him, right? And then Captain Wentworth, of course, hasn't stopped courting women. He's very much ready to get married, and yet he has to confess that he's never met her match. He's never met anyone who is as pleasing as her, and he doesn't ever expect to. At this point, he's like, I will probably never meet anyone as well made for me as her, but as long as they're good enough, then I'll be happy. He's almost given up on finding someone quite like her. But as long as they aren't as easily persuaded as her, he's okay with it. So in this one, it's harder to get that same kind of gravitas or certainty about their love into a teenage romance. And that's not the author's fault. That's just something that is hard to do in a YA. When you're saying, I was 16 when I loved this person, I'm 19, and I will never love anyone the way I love that person. It's like, but you were 16 when you fell in love. It's been 3 years since you've seen them. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to really buy into that. And again, not really the author's fault. I don't know how you remedy that necessarily. It's just, yeah. Anyways, so moving on. The biggest thing I think that was a hurdle for me in this book is, so Anne Elliot in Persuasion, she's one of my favorite of Jane Austen's heroines because she has this quiet strength that I think is often underrated and taken for granted. Everybody, I feel like in our society, we value women who are bold and outspoken and, like willing to speak their mind and tell people how it is. And that's, rewarded a lot, it feels like. But someone who maybe is more quiet and reserved and is not easily offended, but is still strong. And if they feel strongly about something, they will be unmoved. And we see that in Anne. There are several times where her family tries to convince her to feel one thing or to make one decision, and she's refuses to do what they want. So she does have a backbone. She just very much picks and chooses her battles. And I don't know, there's just something about Anne Elliot that I really love. And I feel like in The Stars We Steal, the Anne character is dramatically changed. It is not the same Anne Elliot, which is something you can do in a retelling to help it feel new and like your own book. So this is just a choice that the author has to make. They have to decide which characters they're going to change up a little bit. But for me, because I loved Anne so much as a reader, I think it made it hard for me to enjoy this new take on Anne Elliot and to connect to her. She comes across, she calls herself prickly, and she admits as a character that other people see her as prickly, but I sort of resented her for that because Anne Elliot is not prickly. Anyways, she's pretty combative, very argumentative, and a little bit whiny and complaining, in my opinion. And then in addition to that, Captain Wentworth is a little bit more cruel than the original Captain Wentworth. The impression I get with Captain Wentworth in the original Persuasion is everything he does that seems kind of like, that was kind of a jerky thing to do. It's almost as if he's doing it subconsciously and not intentionally. He admits at one point in the novel that he was, perhaps he wanted her to feel jealous or wanted her to feel regret or pain. I can't remember exactly how he says it, but it doesn't come across as malicious. It almost comes across as, I think deep down I wanted to hurt you because I had been hurt. And I am not quoting it perfectly at all. I do not remember exactly how he says it, but there is sort of like that idea there that, how any of us feel when we're seeing an ex. We want that ex to maybe regret letting us go. You know what I mean? But then the Captain Wentworth in The Stars We Steal, it feels much more like very intentional and malicious and targeted. Like It feels very much like he hates Leo and he is going to make her rue the day. And there's something a little bit too intentional about it that makes you kind of, I don't think I like you. It's hard to forgive almost in some ways because like he goes after her sister intentionally to hurt her. He intentionally courts her little sister and even flirts with her cousin. And what else does he do? Oh, this is part of the twist, so I won't go into it yet. Maybe towards the end, which I'm getting to anyways, because this has been going on way too long. But yeah, anyways, he does several things in the book that are a little bit malicious. And I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way to the point where I'm like, at this point, I don't know if I want you two to be a couple. And aside from that, they're both just so, like, every time they're in the room together, it's so hot, cold, hot, cold. Like, at one point, they're friends, and the next time they meet, they're bitter enemies again, and then they're friends, and then they're bitter enemies, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting to go through their whole turmoil. And conflict is good in a romance. It's like you have to have that angst and that conflict there. It just feels like so much of this conflict is contrived or just misunderstandings that really don't make sense, and they're just not communicating. And it's the type of communicating where they should be able to communicate this, or I don't even know exactly how to explain it, but it feels exhausting. And it gets to the point where you're just like, I don't care. Like, whatever. Either you're together or you're not. Like, just stop. You're driving me nuts. Yeah. And then, okay, so getting into spoilers. We're getting into the spoilers now of this book. I'm going to go ahead and dive into some, because there were some very specific things that bothered me. Okay. One of the twists is that Wentworth is actually into the black market, and so he's stealing things from wealthy people. Which in and of itself, it doesn't necessarily make me dislike a character. You know, he's supposedly the Robin Hood figure. Like, whatever. I can enjoy a morally gray character, but I don't like a morally gray character who views themselves as a saint and comes across sanctimonious and self-righteous. So he's like, look at these horrible wealthy people, and then there's people out there starving. Well, he himself is now wealthy, and he got wealthy by stealing from other wealthy people. He is participating in the same, you know, fancy dances and food and luxury items and living in luxury apartments. He is participating in this world, and he is telling everybody else who is wealthy, you all are complicit in evil. There are these people that are starving, and you're sitting up here drinking your champagne or whatever. You're doing it too, Elliot. Like, that is the most frustrating thing for me. I don't mind a thief as long as they're able to be like, you know what? I'm no saint, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I rob from the rich to feed the poor, and I get wealthy too. Like, if they have some sort of self-awareness of their hypocrisy, then, like, I'm okay with it. But he just comes across as a little too self-righteous and like, I am going to save the world, but you're like a jerk, so get over yourself. And then at the same time, also, he's stealing from Leo, who is kind of on the verge of bankruptcy and going into starvation herself if they lose too many things. And maybe he didn't know that at the time when he was stealing from her, but still, it's, oh man, it's such a douchey move. And going along with that, like taking things that are heirlooms from her mother who died, like just like, oh. And I mean, he said it wasn't him, it was his friend who is supposedly friends with Leo. Oh, what's her name? It's been so long. It's been several weeks since I've read it, and I gave the book back. What was her name? I don't remember. Whatever. The girl who's his friend. This part really rubbed me the wrong way. When she goes to apologize to Leo, they go to make up. And she tells Leo, she says, just so you know, I didn't know you. When I stole those dresses before I knew you. And like what she's really trying to say is, it wasn't personal. I wasn't pretending to be your friend. I genuinely like you. You are genuinely my friend. I just steal dresses from everybody. But at the same time, it kind of comes across as, if I had known you, and then she just kind of forgot that she had stolen their dresses. But it's almost comes across as, you know, if I had gotten to know you before we had already stolen your things, I wouldn't have stolen your things. You would have been my friend. And it's almost like she's saying, it's okay that I took these priceless, valuable items from other wealthy families because they're wealthy and they're the douchebags. People that I like, like, they don't deserve to be stolen from because I like them. So she becomes the moral arbitrator of who deserves to be stolen from and who doesn't deserve to be stolen from. And it's just kind of icky. Like, either people should be stolen from, and one person's priceless, valuable heirlooms, why is that more important than another person's priceless, valuable heirlooms? Like, everyone might have a sob story connected to those heirlooms. Like, it's again, the lack of self-awareness. It's I feel bad for doing this to you because I like you as a person and I shouldn't have done it. But how about maybe I shouldn't steal things from people anymore. Maybe this is causing pain that I didn't realize is happening, or I don't know. And then Leo just is like, okay, as long as you recognize that it was wrong to steal from me, I'm okay with it. Go ahead, steal from everybody. I don't care. I mean, she does have an issue with the black market, but it's not that they're stealing. It's just the black market itself doesn't always work out for people. Whatever. Anyways, the point being, I can go on for a few more things about this whole issue, about this twist, but needless to say, it just bothers me. It rubs me the wrong way, and I feel like there's not enough self-awareness of these characters where they realize that what they did was wrong, or there's a better way to go about it. Stealing from the wealthy to give to the poor in this scenario is only going to fix the problem for so long. Eventually they run out of resources. And I don't understand the economy of this world, because if you're in space for hundreds and hundreds of years, you would think that the people producing food are the most valuable commodity. Like, that are the people who should be making the most money, but they're not. So obviously there's something messed up in this economy. Like, there's some kind of corruption somewhere. And if you really want to fix the problem, you have to fix the way the system is. Like, just stealing from the people who have the money and giving it over to the other people isn't going to work, because eventually all the money runs out, and the corrupt people who are in charge continue to be in charge. And it just leaves a few people at the top who are in power, and then pretty much everybody else is oppressed. So it's like, this is just a band-aid on a gushing wound. This is not fixing the problem. And even though in a sense they kind of recognize that, and they know that they need to get into politics to change things, it's like they don't have enough of an awareness of that. Like, and that's just frustrating for me. I feel like somebody needs to have a very sound understanding that you cannot fix this problem if you do not fix the system, and you cannot fix the system unless you find some way of taking power. And anyways, so yeah, other than that, like, I get, it feels like I'm bashing on this book, and I really don't mean to. I think it was very well written. I enjoyed it. I read it very quickly. It had some good twists, as I said. And yeah, some interesting changes from the original. As a retelling goes, I thought she did a really good job. But I mean, I'm going to be honest by saying these were some issues I found within the characters themselves, and that's what made it hard for me to fully enjoy it. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Comment down below on your favorite Persuasion retelling or your favorite Jane Austen book, and let me know if you've read these books and what you thought about them. And otherwise, have a great day. Bye.